Hello, I'm John Spinks with the Cult Escape campaign to help people escape religious cults. A few days ago, I had an email from someone who is currently trapped in a high-demand religious cult. They live with their parents who are in the cult, and this person, who I can't name so as not to break confidentiality, said this: "My biggest problem, I think, is where I'm going to live and how I'm going to survive once I leave. Any help or advice you could offer on this would be much appreciated." So that's what this video is about, but just an observation, and many would agree with me that there are many thousands of people around the world right now trapped in religious cults because they know if they leave, they don't know where they're going to go, so they stay trapped. And it's the same with many domestic violence victims. They don't know where they'd go if they left their abusive situation. Obviously, if everyone had enough money, this wouldn't be such an issue, but not everyone does. So what can be done practically? Here's my suggestion. I'll tell my personal experience now, how I managed to successfully leave the cult I was born into, and then I'd like to ask you, if you're happy to, for your advice and wisdom, how to help this person. Let's call him Tom. And if you could write your help in the YouTube comments below here, or on Facebook, I'll send Tom a link so you can get the information that you and I are offering. Is that okay? So let's go. I was in the same situation as Tom at the age of 22. I had come to a place of decision and all absolute commitment on my 22nd birthday, actually, that I was going to leave the cult that I had been born into. I'd hit a tipping point, and my value for freedom and being honest about my desires had shifted into being higher than being under the control of 10 meetings a week with the suffocating, restrictive, ever-changing laws of the leader, even though I might never see my family again. It was a risk that I was prepared to take. But I had nowhere to go. I was not going to live on the streets. I didn't want to do that. I valued a roof over my head. And so here's what I did. And for me, it took me 3 months to find a place and move out. Everyone's different. Some people could take shorter, longer. It's all down to your individual situations and also what your values are, actually. I looked in the local newspapers for accommodation to rent. Now, some of you can still remember what it was like living in the 20th century, before the age of Google and smartphones. But for me, it was 1988, and resources weren't like they are today. So I went to the local newspapers. Now, fortunately for me at the time, I was self-employed, because many cults tie their members into jobs, working for each other. So if you leave, you may lose your job. But I was selling imitation perfumes and aftershave at the time. I was self-employed. Things you do, eh? And eventually, after a lot of searching, I found a low-priced accommodation, 1-bedroom ground floor flat in Wavertree, Liverpool. It wasn't luxurious by any means, but it was freedom and my first big step in that great adventure into the unknown. One of the best decisions, looking back, I've ever made as well. I phoned up and spoke to the landlord, an Iraqi called Hamza, a nice fella, and we arranged the rent. He was especially a nice fella because he didn't put the rent up for 3 years. Now, I hadn't told anyone about my plans to leave, and unless you can trust someone, it's probably best not to. And so it wasn't until the morning that I was ready to go did I break the news to my parents. 7th of November, 1988. It was the saddest day of my life, but sometimes in this life, we have to just go by what's in here and get on with it. As I said before, it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made, though I didn't know this at the time. So by the time I was ready to leave, I had saved up enough money to pay the deposit and the rent. But unless you have enough savings, a next step could be to plan to get a job, or employed or self-employed, and enough income to support yourself. But there are a few alternatives and options. And here's a few of them, which I'll also put in the descriptions below if you want to have a read later. Number 1. First, I run the Cult Escape campaign on www.cult-escape.com, and this year I asked ex-cult members for their best advice for people leaving a cult. Have a look at them on the help page on the website, and as I say, I'll put the description below, because there's almost 250 pieces of advice from ex-cult members which could help you. Number 2, search for and make contact if you can with ex-cult members using social media, especially Facebook, that has many ex-cult groups. Ideally contact those from the cult you are in, if you can, or even other cults, and ask if anybody would consider taking in a lodger in your chosen area where you are prepared to live. If you need help in setting up a Facebook profile, maybe an anonymous one, don't be afraid to ask for help. Number 3, search locally online, wherever you can think of. Local churches even. Not all church people are controlling. For people who are wanting or prepared to have a lodger for maybe a minimal cost, or whatever you can afford. And number 4, in certain countries in the world, there are websites called Spare Room, and such websites that deal with people wanting a room to lodge in, which advertises rooms to rent, and each country you will find such sites. Number 5, make a list of people who could help you if you can, who are outside of the cult, that could potentially help you in some way. If you know anyone, this could be a friend, a doctor, a neighbour, an old classmate, or anyone else, and consider asking them for advice regarding accommodation, or if they know anybody. Personally, when I left, I knew nobody. I had to take total responsibility and do it all by myself. And if I can, age 22, then so can you. So have confidence, survival instinct. Others have gone before you and done it, so why not you? See it as an adventure, a challenge, and you are not alone. There are thousands of ex-members of all different backgrounds here to cheer you on and support you. Because like you, we were all born to be free. So here's a few thoughts to consider, Tom. And everybody else, what do you think? What's your advice for Tom? Advice on getting accommodation, lodgings, etc. And then what's your advice on which you could give on Tom adapting, and people who leave cults adapting to what is such a huge change? How do you survive? Please leave the comments below. And if also below or on Facebook, and if you put them on Facebook, I can transfer them onto YouTube for Tom to read. And please like and subscribe and get this message out to more people, because we just don't know who we could help. Thank you for watching, and wherever you are, have a great Christmas and a happy New Year with unconditional love for all.